You with this morning's edition of News and Views. Who would have actually thought that the RAN in less than a year would actually gain close to 25% against the US dollar? Now, a lot of it is thanks to Donald Trump, who has actually been smothering the dollar. But the key question here is, what does this mean for us in South Africa and the economy as a whole? And joining us this morning is Nedbank CIB's Reezwana Sumad. Reezwana, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you and welcome.
Walaikum salam, and same to you. Jazakallah.
Yes, Rizwana, I think economists who must have made predictions about a year ago, would they actually have dreamt that we would have got to a state and where we see the rand, obviously now under 16 rand to the dollar. I suppose, we're living in a very volatile, uncertain climate. And I think every day Donald Trump says something else actually happens. So are we surprised?
Look, at Nedbank CIB, we are not surprised. We have had a stronger rand view for the last 2 years. So we expected in the last 2 years the rand to strengthen. Had that being said, it has strengthened and it's likely to strengthen further to about 15 rand 50 against the dollar. At those levels, I think we can't really predict even further strength that could happen. Our view is that it strengthens to 1550 and then possibly hovers or becomes range bound, so ranges between 1550 to 1650 over the next couple of months. It's not just the dollar. I mean, the dollar has weakened. It has been the big reason why the rand has strengthened like it has. But commodity prices, especially platinum, PGMs as a whole, and gold prices have increased quite substantially. For a commodity exporter like South Africa, that is very positive because of the dollar inflows that we get, and that results in a stronger local currency, stronger rand. So there's many factors which I can talk about that's resulted in the rand moving much stronger and possibly even further stronger. Further strength in the next couple of days. But overall, I don't think we were surprised. I think the timing. So we expected the rand to strengthen over a few more months, over extended period, and that's happened quite quickly because of some of the global changes that you mentioned.
Yes, and also I think let's just look at the factors that you speak about, and also the impact, on South Africa as a whole. Because I know there are a number of factors. One can talk about inflation, we can talk about the interest rates, we can talk about imports, we can talk about exports. There's just so much that will impact, obviously, on the economy. Just let's just look at some of the
Yeah.
key issues, the key factors that one needs to take into account with a strengthening rand.
Yeah, the biggest positive impact of a stronger rand is, of course, lower import price inflation. Our biggest import is oil, crude oil, and that's become now cheaper to import. But across the board, across food, manufactured food items, manufactured products, machinery, equipment, and chemicals and crude oil, all of those are now much cheaper to import. So that's quite positive. It will likely have a very positive impact on inflation locally. We've got a very low inflation forecast for this year. We're predicting inflation averages the year at 3.2%. We've come a long way. South Africa being a very high inflation economy, now settling with inflation close to that 3% level, which is very positive for the everyday consumer. And for businesses as well, because we are expecting interest rates to come down on the back of that. So, because of a stronger rand and lower inflation, lower import price inflation, lower fuel costs, so cheaper logistics across the economic value chain, and lower interest rates for consumers and businesses, all of those are very helpful for economic growth, we believe, for this year. I can talk about the negatives if you want me to,
Please,
of a
please
strong.
go ahead, Rizwana. Please go ahead.
So South Africa is a net importer, so the stronger currency helps. But of course, minerals like PGMs, like diamonds, like gold, coal, especially, we of course compete on a global landscape. So a weaker currency implies that our products are much more competitive. Our products that we export are much more competitive when we are competing with the likes of other African countries, when we're competing with the likes of Latin American countries and Europe when it comes to our vehicles. So now with the stronger rand, we're not really competitive there because of course countries would like to buy products at the cheapest rate or at the best value. And if our currency strengthens, it means it's more expensive for other countries to buy from us. So that is a negative. It does imply that some of the smaller exporters are going to be negatively impacted. Their products, perhaps they're going to see a drop in demand from overseas clients for some of their products because of the stronger rand, or if the rand remains very strong for now. But I think what has offset that is if you look at the large miners, the PGM miners, the gold miners, the coal miners that export, um, dollar prices have increased quite substantially. So the increase in the dollar price that we've seen of the commodities have helped many of the big producers, but definitely a stronger rand will make the smaller exporters come under a lot of pressure from a sales perspective.
Rizwana, I know we are talking about the rand and the US dollar, but what we're seeing globally as well is this move away from the dollar, because we've seen many countries are now starting to trade in other currencies or in their own currencies as well. And, obviously we still peg to the dollar, but just looking at what is playing out globally, and particularly when one looks at countries like China, Russia, all these countries are actually trading in their own currencies as well. And with the reduced demand for the US dollar, looking at South Africa and whether it's in our interest as well to start considering trading in other currencies apart from the US dollar. Would that be a
Yeah.
factor?
What we have been seeing, and this has been a trend over the last 5 years, and I would say, I think even longer term as well, if you go back 10 years, every year gradually we're seeing countries like China start to invoice in Chinese renminbi. And we've seen that increase. So a bulk of trade globally is still settled in dollars, because if you look at global commodity prices, oil prices, global soft commodity prices that trade on the financial markets and exchanges are still traded in dollars. They still settled in dollars. So a bulk of global trade still happens in dollars. But I think, as you've mentioned, that has become smaller in the last few years. Over 50 to 60% of global trade is still settled in dollars, but about 10 years ago, that was over 75%. So it has come down. Many more countries are trading in their local currency or trading in the regional super currency, like in Asia with the Chinese renminbi being the biggest and most liquid market there. So we are seeing that shift in terms of South Africa and most central banks. So we've got dollar reserves. The central bank holds strategic dollar reserves. In case of economic recessions, or in case of times of crises, but just to really help the local financial market when there are distortions in the market. Bulk of our reserves is in US dollars, but a significant portion of it, about 10 to 15%, is held in gold, in IMF SDR, so in IMF basket currencies, and other smaller currencies. But the bulk of it is held in US dollars, for the simple reason is because the dollar is still the most traded currency in the world. Global commodities are still priced, settled, and paid in dollars. And if you look at the US dollar market and US Treasury market, is still one of the biggest and most liquid markets. So it will make sense over the next couple of years, like as other central banks have also done, is buy more gold. but South Africa's gold holding is quite significant already. But we are starting to diversify and increase our holdings of other currencies like IMF SDR, so a basket of IMF member currencies apart from the dollar as well. So, yeah, I think everything that you've mentioned makes sense, but we also have to be logical in the fact that the dollar is still the biggest and most traded currency in the world, and that's going to continue to being eroded over the next few years, and we see global central banks start to prepare for that.
Yes, and also I think just finally, I think looking at it from a consumer perspective, because we've got all these global political, economic dynamics that are playing out, and just to understand what does this mean for the average person, the man in the street, the consumer.
Yeah. So for the average South African consumer, I think a stronger currency would imply things like lower imported products. The first experience that the man on the street would have is in terms of lower fuel prices. So lower fuel prices every month on the back of a stronger rand. That's the immediate impact that consumers would feel the benefit of this. Consumers that have debt or have access to debt or are indebted would experience lower interest rates in the next couple of months. Already, the Reserve Bank have cut interest rates in the last year by 100 basis points or 1%. This year, we're expecting interest rate cuts of 50 basis points or half a percent. So for consumers that have bonds, have mortgages, that will imply that they pay less towards their mortgages or their vehicle finance or that sort of thing. Those are the immediate effect that it would have on the man on the street. The longer term impact, I think, for people that are traveling, of course, a stronger rand rather, is highly beneficial when it comes to spending overseas. And then structurally for the economy, if we do see things like interest rates coming down and the cost of borrowing cheapening, it would imply that businesses are able to take on more debt to expand operations because it's cheaper from an interest rate perspective. And that's effectively what we're started to see from the third quarter of last year and into the fourth quarter of last year, where corporate credit demand has ticked up because of lower interest rates, and we saw private sector businesses starting to invest or expand investments. Of course, all of that means better job creation or more job creation, and that directly impacts the consumer in a medium to longer term time horizon. So all of this is positive, but I must also stress that the rand has strengthened quite a bit. Quite significantly and very fast. And so, in the next couple of months, we could see the rand either remaining range bound at current levels or hovering within a range of 1550 to 1650 because it has moved quite a lot. It is also expected that the rand will continue to strengthen
Yes, I think Rizwana Sumad has actually frozen, but what we'll do is I think we've got a gist of what she has to say, and with it, we're going to go for a break. We come back, we still have good time for Juma Nasiha coming up as well, and a lot more ground to cover. And the time is just heading towards 9 a.m. And the next hour of news and views will be brought to you by Africa Muslims Agency.